Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me Martha Schwartz, who is the writer and artist on Seed Seekers series, the Seed Seeker series. So, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, now I am excited because you got a lot going on with Seed Seekers right now. Obviously, the Kickstarter is going on with Big World, and we're going to get into that. But I do want to talk about Seed Seekers because some people don't know what Seed Seeker is. They're hearing it for the first time. So, what is the basic premise of Seed Seekers?
All right, well, the basic premise is we have a character who was born in this other dimension, and he was ripped away from this world because of people wanting the power and controlling their world. And so he had the power from his father, and his father, passed away and inherited to him. And so the one wizard decided it's best to keep him into our world. So when he was here, their world is dying. So the three warriors, there's three women warriors, come and help him come back into this world, or their dimension, taking him from this world. And he is new to this world. He's trying to help them rebuild this society that has been destroyed because he is now older. 20 years has passed, and they need his help to help reshape it, rebuild it. He had a seed within inside him that is controlling the world, so to speak. Right now is what we know as a plot. I don't want to give too much away at that point. But anyway, so as he's growing and he's meeting new people, because the world had died so poorly, a lot of people had died from the war or scrambled away from the war. So now they have to try to rebuild and gain this power back, and he's helping them. But he's right now in this new series is missing home, and he wants to go back into his dimension, which is our dimension, to see his family once again. And he has that chance, but we don't know if it's wise for him to come into this world because he has this power. So this is what the premise is how is it going to help? Is it going to help him coming into this world and stuff like that? So this is where we stand with the great big world, because of the two different worlds and how it relates to each other. So that's what the story is about. But mainly with this Kickstarter or this series is that you have a chance to see your family again. So he has a chance to see his family again. And I know it might help or hurt the world that he's in, but what's more important right now is, does he have a chance to say goodbye to his family? And he just might have that chance. So with this story, he will have that chance to say goodbye, and hopefully things will happen, and we'll see. So I hope that you guys can join aboard on this.
So to even before we get into that, because there's a rich history of stuff. Obviously, there's a huge growing path and position for this character, the main character to come in. I think it's Ian to come in too. And obviously, he has the three women warriors are Geoffrose and Marteline. I think I got the names right. And then obviously there's some enemies that sort of turn good. And so there's a lot of stuff that's built on and into this. I mean, we got, I think, 3-4 volumes before we even get to Big World. I think we got like 2 or 3 standalone stories. So obviously, I am curious where a lot of this inspiration came from, because this is definitely an all ages book, and it's definitely aimed more at children. And so that's sort of unique in the comic world right now, because comics, and there's nothing wrong with having an adult comic, having teenage themed comics, but children's comics are much rarer at this stage in comic history. And even there's been a lot of negative stigma attached to graphic novels and comics for 20 years, and now that's starting to peel away as well. So I'm curious where all this was even inspired from, because it is a very different niche and very different genre than what I normally speak to people in their Kickstarter projects and what's going on. And I think it's fascinating.
Well, thank you. I couldn't say it better myself. You pretty much nailed it on the head. I've read comics for years. Yes, I'm an elder. But I grew up on Batman, Superman, Marvel, DC, what name you. I mean, I watched Batman, the very first Batman in theaters. I loved it. You know, it was a good story. But I love comics of all generations or genres and stuff like that. So I love Archie comics as well. So I started reading Archie comics. But now even those comics are just fading. There's not too many comics out there for children. And so with Seed Seekers, I wanted to shine a little bit more and hopefully steer a direction back toward children's comics because that's what Seed Seekers gears toward. So yes, Archie was an inspiration. Also, I don't know if you remember the 80s television series Dungeons and Dragons. I got a little bit of inspiration from them as well. Because, you know, there's kids and going on a roller coaster, and then they go on the roller coaster and they go into this another world where they have to, you know, try to go home. So that's kind of like in the same sense. But anyway, so also in this story, I want to gear toward kids because this is a struggling time right now. We are in a culture that we have so many things hitting at us, like Black Lives Matters or Democrats, Republicans, left wings, right wings. We got so much attacking. Media is attacking, and we just don't need that right now. Kids need something safe to read, but yet understand what's going on around them. Seed Seekers is a diverse channel. It's, yes, we have the hero. Yes, he's helping them rebuild the city, but it takes one of the girls here to help them. One of the warriors here to help them. The good guys, the bad guys, they all have something in common that will help save this world. It's not just the hero that solves the problems. It's everybody. And we all have a little diverse, but work together to make a better world. So that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, and to even piggyback off of that, because one of the things that I think is very prevalent is that there is lessons. There is this idea that there is this core idea of lessons and learning and interacting with each other and communication between everybody. And look, you know, there are certain characters who are better at communicating than others, but obviously everybody is trying to reach out to one another. And some people go 60% and meet somebody 40%, some of these characters. And obviously people also evolve and change throughout this. And also the other key element that I think is major that is sort of lacking in a lot of books right now is this idea of friendship. And I know it sounds a little corny when I say it that way, but I think it's super important to actually realize that when you have a 7-year-old reading it, you know, you have to teach these core values, you know, such as friendship and learning and communication, because in a graphic novel or a comic book, a kid can pick something up that they might not be able to pick up from a novel, or they may not be able to pick up from something else, as well as graphic novels do evoke different emotions. It requires both sides of your brain to work in a very combined way, unlike other mediums. And so what was that like interjecting it? Because even just from a personal development growth, it definitely is going to have a different effect and probably help some kids figure out how to connect with each other.
Exactly. And you said it perfectly. And also, in the same sense, is I want them to have fun when they read it, you know, and I try to make it as simple as to understand, you know, keeping it in a narrative, but yet also have the curiosity of like even the adult reader who wants to read it and see where the direction goes on it as well. So hopefully it helps. I mean, I'm gearing.
Yeah, and to even dive further into this, because you said that you have to keep it simple, but it is plenty complicated too. I'm not going to pretend that this isn't complicated, because we have an interesting situation where a main character is somewhat transported out of his own world and has to take the responsibility of being a hero in this other world, doesn't really know what's going on necessarily, is in the guidance of 3 women warriors, Giaffros and Marteline, and they're all sort of coming into themselves and all coming into being, I don't want to say adults per se, but definitely going into adolescence, I think is a good way to put it, and having responsibility. And even though they have guidance, they still don't have 100% guidance, and they're going on an adventure and they're sort of going out into the world. So obviously that's complicated because, you've been releasing this, I think, since 2014. And so obviously, as you're releasing this stuff, your reader is growing with you at the same time. And so what was that entire thing like, building that out and throwing that in there? Because that is complicated. And I think it's complicated enough that a 7-year-old can start to grasp it, but then a 10-year-old has a better understanding. And then the parent of that child also has an understanding and can say, okay, I get where this is going. Because obviously you need something a little bit interesting happening in comics.
Oh, yes. Yes. It's definitely going to be interesting and very involving because there are going to be some twists and turns, which I'm not going to give away. But you're right on the fact that the characters are developing because, as you can see, their world was dying and there was a huge war. So a lot of the people are gone or separated. So it's up to this new or Ian to come in and try to help them rebuild this world that is falling apart. So, but it takes more than just him and his seed. I hate saying something like that, but that's not. It's the seed. It's to help the city, the world grow, his world grow. So it's going to be a very interesting ride. I will tell you that much. And yes, it will end because I've had a lot of people ask, "Will this end?" It will end, but that's why I say and I urge the Kickstarter. I need people to get on board with it because, like, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I got more stuff coming, so I just,
And then to even go further on complications, the two villains who sort of redeem, I know, spoiler alert, a little bit, dropping it. It's sort of early on. It's been out for 6 years, more or less. But Shane and Chana, which are brother and sister, obviously they sort of have a change of heart mid, series a little bit. And I think they're also coming into themselves too, which is kind of nice in many ways that we have an enemy that says, hey, now we understand that we don't have to be the enemy and that we don't necessarily want to be, bad per se. We were opposing you, but we've now come to see a different path and it's kind of redemption. And they're also figuring out and going on very much an adventure of their own in many ways. And I think that's a nice touch because it allows you to bring back the enemy to some degree, allows them to grow, allows those characters to be developed even further, and then we actually get to sort of understand where they're going. So what was that like, getting to play with that? Because I think that is sort of the secret sauce, in my opinion, and that's my favorite part so far.
Well, thank you. Yes, because actually they very much play an important role. And Shauna, watch out for her because she is going to be very important, especially in the next book of the series that's coming out as soon as this one goes by, because this is part 1, because there's 3 parts. But she is a very important sauce in the series because she's not a villain. Well, she was a villain in the very first book, and she's had a change of heart. But sometimes it takes a little bit more to steer that heart in the right direction. So we might see some interesting curves about it. But also in the same breath, there are people that's going to hold a lot of prejudices against her because her father, well, their father technically, but they look at her because she's a different color, different, she looks like her father. So they're going to look at her like she might be the evil one. So she's probably the one that we're going to watch out for. But is she evil? You're going to see. It's far from the truth. That's like they always say, and you see in series and TV shows now, there is no good or evil. There are no, bad. It's weak or strong, or whatever, like the Karate Kid thing. Because that sticks by on me a lot. But it's like, there are no good and bad. They're just characters, So we're going to keep an eye on her. But yes, we're glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and then we see things that happen, and there is alludes to the past, and obviously there's also things that happen. Lost Legacy is something that definitely deals with all of this, and they sort of have to deal with their dad and a few other things, as well as earning trust, I think, is one of the other things too. And I think it's one of the lessons throughout this entire series in many ways is this idea of earning trust, where Ian comes into more or less kingship, rebuilding the world. And while he's doing that, obviously there are people who want to stop him, people who don't want the world to come back, and then also, he might be king in title, and he might be declared the king, but he's not necessarily the king of the people at the moment. And there's a whole thing of earning trust, and then also trusting your friends and trusting your advisor and trusting, Chana and Jane and those two, and how far can you trust somebody. And I think that's super interesting because it is something that I think that, we don't necessarily teach kids per se about trust and how far to trust somebody and things like that. And a lot of people have to go figure that out on their own through a variety of methods. And so I think this is super interesting. Just from a story point, I think it's actually quite adult in many ways. So I like how it's snuck in there and in a way that is understandable.
I couldn't have said it better myself. You're selling the series for me. Thank you.
So I like that component, and I think it's really a nice touch on all of that. And then, I think that kind of brings us quickly, obviously there's a hell of a lot more in this series and going on, and I'm avoiding certain things. I'm speaking vaguely purposely because I do want to talk about Big World, which is the current Kickstarter that's going on. And obviously we touched upon it, but this is sort of dealing with Ian's past.
Yes.
And reasons why. And technically, and I'm going to take a shot here, he was sort of summoned, partially maybe by his choice, but partially not at the same time. And he had a decent life back home. He was very musically talented, and then he gets thrown to this world, and now he's missing home. And that's a very complicated issue. And so I am curious how you came up with this idea, because obviously there's, I think, 4 volumes before this one, and then now we're on this volume, and obviously now we're starting to miss home. So where did that entire idea and premise come from? Because I think it's really interesting at this stage.
That's a good question. I think it has to do with family in general. We all have family, and they come and go out of our life. And it's like, I recently, well, not recently, probably about 2 years ago, I lost my mom. And it's like, it's hard to lose family members. It's hard to lose your mother or whatever. And it's not a choice that we have, even though Ian has a choice, to leave or go back, which he had a choice in the first part of the novel. I think he had a choice to go back, and he's like, well, I think I'll stay here. But you lose family, it's hard, and you can't say goodbye to them once they're gone, So Ian just has that chance to go back to see his family again, to say goodbye, or he might have that chance. You can't find out till he hears the Big World. But if you have that chance to go back in that world, would you want to? Yes. A lot of us would want to have that chance to say goodbye to our family. And that means something to me right now with the heart. It's like, if I could have a chance to say, I love you, Mom, or goodbye, I know it's not good, whatever. I would love to have that chance. So that's probably pretty much where this direction of the story is. It's like, he's going to have a chance to talk to his family. But is the outcome going to be good? I don't know. I can't, give too much away. But going back to what you said earlier, he was a musician, but his father wanted him to be an engineer. He put him through school to be an engineer. And when he wants to be a musician, then his father's like, I don't know what you're getting into that. You're no talented. You should be a musician, or you should be an engineer. That's what I put you through college for. We all have that parent. We all have that father or mother who says, I don't want you to do this. You're dreaming. You have too many dreams. So, this is a chance for him to go back and say, Dad, I'm doing things, but we'll find out, won't we?
So to even go off of that, because obviously that is something that, definitely clashes. And at this point, you have a fellowship. You have readers who have been reading with you and reading your material for a while. And obviously, if they started, 3 years ago, they're obviously a little bit older. And so obviously that, then people start to come into these ideas, earlier and earlier in our society by nature saying, I want to go down this path. I'm 28. I wasn't, when I was 10 years old, knowing what I want to do. But now we have 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds who say, hey, I'm going to go down this path. And they start making moves without people realizing what they want to do. And so that's sort of what happens, I think. And I think that this is an issue that is actually coming up in child development and in society, is that there is clashes between children and parents on what they want to do. And I think this book definitely sort of highlights that. Whether that was intentional or not, I'm not too sure, but I think that this does sort of start to highlight that. And I think you hit something on the head, very, very essential, that's happening with children right now and in society. And then furthermore, it's really interesting, just this idea that, do you want to go back home and do you shed all your responsibility? Because this is also a lesson now that you have responsibility. People are counting on you. You have obligations to people to some degree. I think that's a lacking trait in many ways in our society as a whole, where it's, once you go and assume kingship, you have responsibility and obligations to your subjects, to the people who are following you. You have some obligations to your friends at the same time. And now it's, but also it's kind of like he's missing home too. It's a really interesting question. And I think it's a deep philosophical question in many ways. And the fact that you're doing it at a very, I don't want to say child level, but aimed at children.
Yeah.
Because this could be aimed at adults too. This question is the same question. It's just how it's I guess phrased and dressed and all that stuff. And so I just think it's super fascinating. And I think it's very interesting, because usually this question would be aimed at more adults and might even be aimed in a more darker way. And it's almost aimed in a light way in many ways. So super fascinating.
Yeah. That's pretty much the direction that I wanted to take, especially to have them understand that, that this is choices that you're going to make in your life, that you're going to see, you are important, and what direction should you take? What is more important to you, and to take those directions, and, don't be afraid to do it if you have to do it, that kind of thing. So that's what I'm hoping for in this book as well.
And so, having said all this, I'm actually super curious on this, because you're writing a book aimed at children. It's definitely an all ages book. And so you have less choices to some degree on word choice. There's no cursing. There's no like nudity, no extensive violence. And the reason why I bring all this up is because obviously those are story venues that can push things forward and get a point super across really well. And when we have intense situations in this book, it can be very challenging. And obviously you're dealing with an adult question in many ways. And so what is that like for you to play with? Because to some degree it must be really fun, because you have to get around things and get creative. But at the same time, I would imagine it must be frustrating too sometimes, because there's an easy answer in certain things that you can't necessarily use. So I'm super curious how that entire process works and how you brainstorm around the story, because I think you do it very well in the first volumes with some of these big ideas. But I think people don't understand how difficult it can be in certain things when you don't have an F-bomb to drop for a good example.
Right. Well, I try not to think in that direction as far as because there might be hard matter to talk about, in what I'm saying in dialogue and stuff like that between characters, but to keep them more adult as well, because you're thinking about who's reading it, but in the same sense as how to imply it without being so past the people that you're trying to reach out to. You don't want to make it, you don't want to make them sound like unintelligible either, kind of thing. You don't want to have bad curse words or sort of thing. But I try to avoid a lot of the hard words and the hard dialogues for that kind of thing. to keep it. And I also have a great editor to look over my words and stuff like that. So I mean that helps too. Always have a great editor. I use Chuck Pinot. He's very awesome.
Oh, he's the best. He's the best. I've been on his show. He's so good. He's like the nicest guy. He's so good. He's a great editor. He's been on my show twice. He's great.
He's been very, very helpful for me. In the beginning, I did it pretty much by myself, but I always need that help, that support, because you're doing the art, you're doing the. Sometimes I might drop an F-bomb half the time if I'm not expressing myself any next to the level. But like I was saying, if to answer your question, it's just like I keep the conversation, more how it relates to the story and how simple. And I'm not going back to not keeping it simple, but keep it simple to adjust for the reader, but not to make it outlandish kind of thing, sort of.
So to even go off of that, because obviously you have readers who have been with you for a while now, and obviously Kickstarter gives you data on that as well, and they've gotten better. They've gotten better in the last 2 years. Early Kickstarter was the Wild West. Back in 2015, there was like nothing there on Kickstarter to help anybody. But now, 2020, 2021, a lot of data is out that helps people create and even buyers buy, and it's wonderful and it's a great platform. But do you feel though that you can take a little bit more risks in the writing? Because obviously, when I was growing up, certain words weren't good words, and I'm not going to drop a bunch of words. I'm trying to be as PG as possible, but we could use the B word, what wasn't really allowed to be said on television. If the word ass was said, which I think is a PG word for the most part now. I think every 10-year-old knows that word by far. That word was, oh, did he just say that? And it made you stop for a second. Now, if that word is said, it's not that big of a deal. So clearly, language has changed. And so even though you're writing an all ages book and obviously you're catering towards, do you feel though that like in the last 7 years or so that you've been working on it, that you have a little bit more liberties? Because I think it's really interesting, because I think in the last 7 years language has changed dramatically.
Yeah, there's going to be more adult situations in the story as well, so you're getting more toward the nail on the head kind of thing, because they're going to have some not awkward, but like hard adult situations that would probably have a little swear. Like I even flashed a little nudity in the first book. So, but not very hard. It's a little subtle, whatever you say. So, I mean, it'll be there. It'll probably be there no matter what, but nothing like, harsh.
So what are you saying?
I try to avoid all that if I could. Because I basically want to keep it at the all ages level kind of thing. I want to keep it safe for the kids, because you're right on the focus that I do want to focus more on the children and help them grow. Because like I said earlier, I want to keep it, they don't have anything to read right now at this point. And do I need that hardware to sell my book? No. My series the sales are awesome. I need the money, or it'd be nice to have the money. And who wouldn't say that, But to me, my passion is getting the book to the reader, to find the audience that I need, to find the children that I need to want to read it, to want to like it or want to grow from it, so to speak. So that's my focus right now.
So to talk about the Kickstarter, since we're talking about it, this is an active Kickstarter. I think I'm not sure how many days. Is there 17 or 16 days left?
16.
So we have 16 days left, and obviously it's an active Kickstarter. So obviously there's a bunch of rewards. Obviously you can get it in PDF. And so I'm curious about just PDFs and digital, because I think digital is arguably the biggest thing that's popped out in the middle of COVID. I think it started coming out in 2019 heavy. And I think a lot of creators before in the last 2 years were very opposed to digital. And I don't really understand why, because I love digital comics. And I think a lot of money was left on the table. And I used to go into these Facebook groups, and all of a sudden what happens is that people saying, oh, I don't prioritize digital. So I am curious how you view digital, because I think digital is amazing. It's the easiest for me to read. I have an iPad, and I just legitimately plug it in, and it looks amazing on my iPad. And I can lay in my bed and read comics all day.
I have a lot of digital rewards. I have the very first issue if you're brand new to this, so I have that for $1. Simple, easy. You can read it and you know who the characters are. Pretty much you get every character, not the newer ones, but get a lot of the very first characters. So if you want to know about the story, you got the $1 PDF. This book in general, I have a $3 PDF available for you. So if you've read a whole series, you've got this one involved too. So the PDF files are there available. I have the whole series. If you want to read the whole series up to this point, I got that as well. But stemming from it, if you want to go ahead and do physical, I love giving out physical rewards as well. I always reward people. Even if I get this funded, and I did it with the last campaign, if it gets funded, everybody gets a freshener, air freshener, a sticker, a business card, everything, If you don't want it because of COVID thing, I understand about that as well. You say pass or whatever, or give it, to a drive or whatever. I might put that in my little reward thing if this gets funded. It's going to get funded. But you know what I mean.
To even talk about that, because I think digital opens up a world to so many opportunities for people. Right. Because for me, there's certain books that I say, oh, I don't want to go drop, $20 on a graphic novel or a first issue, or, this is really expensive, but it's dirt cheap digitally. And I don't know if it's, good, bad, or the other. I don't know if I'm going to like it. And if I spend $3 on a digital copy and I say, it really wasn't my cup of tea, I don't feel as bad as if I spent $25. And then also what winds up happening with me, because I like to back a lot of Kickstarters, is that, if I drop $3 on something and I don't like that, I still can back a bunch of other stuff digitally and enjoy it. And then if I like it, though, I then on the next one am going to say, oh, I need to go and pick this up. And I'm going to go back the physical reward. And now that's how I view it, is that it's a very easy way how to get into a series and get into a bunch of series. And like, as you stated, for $1, you can get the first issue and say, hey, I never heard of Seed Seekers before, but I'm willing to try it for $1. I'm willing to try something for $3, right. Because it is a big jump sometimes to go from $3 to $10 or $3 to $15. And also sometimes people just don't have money in the middle of March. Sometimes people don't have money in the middle of June or, in December, people don't have money. And so therefore it's like they want to back a cool project and they want to read comics. So I just like the fact that I think digital, cheap digital, especially on first issues, is brilliant. That's why Comixology has like 99-cent issues, because guess what? For 99 cents, I'm going to go drop $20 and get 20 issues of series I never heard of that are maybe not so indie, but small press. And I'm like, oh, this is great. I want to buy the entire series. And sometimes I do that. And so that's how I view digital. And I don't know how you view it to that degree, but I think that, for people who want to read it, and especially because now every kid has an iPad. Every 10-year-old has an iPad under the sun. It's now becoming almost a household item for your kid to have an iPad. Not to mention that COVID and technology has further increased that demand. And so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if your audience is more digital or even more physical, because it's also very complicated where a lot of young people as well are way more digital oriented.
I know, because you got webtoons and stuff like that. That's why I put PDFs as my top, and I don't overspend you, because I know there's a lot of PDFs that are people that charge $5 for PDFs. I don't go that high. I think $3 is a reasonable price, because it's, it's the dollar's good intro. $3 is, a good, support. I don't go higher than that, so to speak. But I was going to say, but I don't want to go too far out ahead, but I was even thinking like maybe in the future I might offer motion comic PDF rewards. I know that not a lot of people are into that, like, because some people just like to read, but some people, especially the kids, because if that's my audience, I might start thinking about, what kind of venues I can do ahead for them. So it's never ending.
And to even go further off of digital and now dive into the physical, you do physical rewards as you stated. And so I am curious, you got a bunch of variants, I believe. I think you have just the regular cover. I think you got an exclusive cover. I think you have an original, Great Big World cover. And you also have something that's sort of cool where you have a cover and you're willing to do sketch covers, which are always cool because I love original art. And then you have also a cover with a seed. So you got a lot of cool physical stuff as well coming out. So that's kind of cool too. And I think the sketch stuff is awesome because I like original art. I think original art is fun. I think getting stuff drawn is always cool. And so what is that like in building all this stuff out and having some different variants and then also just getting to do blank covers and sketches, and how do you work with all that stuff?
Yeah, it's pretty much me. Well, on my printer too, obviously. I do print through Kablam. I don't know if you. Well, I'm sure you heard about Kablam printing. They're featured out here in Orlando, so that's why I'm going to them, because I like to help local businesses. So, and I know the people that run it, so I follow, or that's where I print it. But the seed one that you were talking about, that's the first time ever that I ever had something to do with that. What it is that you'll get a sketch cover sketchbook just like any other one, but I have these nice little cards that are going to be attached to the drawing that I'm going to give you. So that's going to be a very highly edition cover, which is not a bad price for it. So that's a very limited exclusive to this Kickstarter funding. That's the first time ever done. So I'm always thinking of different kind of like rewards, something that'll bring the attention to a lot of the new people that want to get involved into the Kickstarter.
And to even talk about that, because this one, and one of the ones, and I think this is the one we're talking about, is this idea that you get a bunch of seeds that you could actually plant, and that it's super limited. And I never heard of anything like this in general, and I think it's kind of cool. I think it's kind of fun. I think it's something that people then could go plant in their backyard or plant in a pot, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember back that thing, and then it can grow and you could actually see it. So what was that entire thing? And also it kind of fits into the entire idea of rebuilding the world, in many ways in this comic. And I think it goes sort of beyond the Kickstarter in many ways. So where did that idea even come from? Because that's something that's very much out of the box type of thing.
Well, I've seen them around, like the seeded paper that you see every now and then. I looked at it online, and because I was like, well, let me think of a business card kind of deal. And I'm like, business card? Why think a business card? Now I know that you can't get a printed sketch. That'd be nice to get a printed Kickstarter book with seeds in it. But I found some seeded paper just like any other place, and I'm going to attach it to each one of I'll make a special drawing, sort of like the image I used in Seed Seekers where he's holding the plant. And the seeded paper I'll put on to the drawing that I will draw for you, and put that on there as well. But I also was thinking about like extra rewards, like stretch goals and stuff. I was going to use the seeded paper for added to air fresheners or whatever kind of like little rewards I was going to do, because that's very important to me. That's what this is about, is seed seekers, planting a seed. We make things grow. We help things grow. Give the seed, plant the seed, spread the seed, and help build your kingdom, sort of deal. So that's where I kind of got the idea from.
No, I think it's clever. I think it's very much outside in which that we're starting to see a lot more of that on Kickstarter as well, where people are doing way more interesting things. And I think people have to, because I think Kickstarter is becoming extremely competitive. And I'm going to ask you a few questions about that, because I'm curious how you view Kickstarter. But also, I do want to touch upon one more reward where you could actually get drawn into the book as well, which is a common reward by a lot of people, which I think is great when artists and creators want to bring their fans into the book. And I think it's cool. So obviously, I just want to throw that out there too. So if you like Seed Seekers and you want to do something really cool, obviously you can also get drawn into the book. Awesome.
That one is, and I will not be the artist, so I mean, maybe that'll help. I don't know. Just kidding. I hope I'm going to get Robert Nix. He's going to be my next artist, and he's going to do the follow-up book, because guess what? They're going into another world, so I'm starting it, and he's driving the boat from there. So that's a big reveal coming up. So that's why I need this funded. But he is going to be the one to draw you into the comic, because when they go into the great big world, you're going to be one of the human beings that's out in his in world, New York, whatever. I haven't decided where he lives, but somewhere around there.
So obviously there's a bunch of stuff to come, and I'm not going to push too hard on this because I don't want to ruin too much, and I want to leave a little mystery surrounding it. And so I do want to shift over to talk about Kickstarter just in general, because obviously you've done a bunch of projects on Kickstarter. You've backed a lot of projects on Kickstarter. So you're familiar with Kickstarter. And obviously Kickstarter in the last, I'd say 18 months has changed dramatically, where we have big names now in Kickstarter. We have people using Kickstarter very differently in comics. Comics is one of the only sectors that has had an increase in projects and comics and during COVID. Obviously, a lot more people have come into Kickstarter who are interested in comics as both fans and creators. And so I am curious how you feel about Kickstarter and where Kickstarter is going, because it has gotten a little bit interesting, I think is a good word to use for lack of other words to keep this PG. But I'm sure everybody has an adjective or two in their head on how it's become. So what is your view on that? Because I'm super curious. As somebody who uses Kickstarter.
Well, I don't know about others, but I still find it a very good, useful tool, because I've tried Indiegogo and I wasn't very successful with that. I like Indiegogo for the fact that you raise your money, you keep your money, and that helps a lot. But not a lot of people look at Indiegogo in my path, or at least in my direction. I haven't been able to find the audience there. I feel like Kickstarter spreads the word a little better. I mean, I know that they're very limited on Facebook. Facebook's become like a big martyr between the two of them, but it just how you sell yourself through it, I think. I mean, there's ways around it. There's ways around the Facebook clause or whatever. You don't tell your friends, go through emails. I just find it a much better platform to go through. I also like, and they still have it, because it's like, yeah, in Indiegogo, you have a goal, you keep your money, whatever. I like the fact that you find people, you make those people the connections, and then they tell people, and then it's a bigger network connection to me in my facts. So I learn a lot from that as well. So I prefer Kickstarter on that, and I like the fact that I have a goal, and that's why I keep raising the goal, because to me it's not the money. I'm using that money mainly for the printing costs and paying the people that I have to pay. So like this one, I want to pay for the printing and whatever printing I do, and to hire my next artist to do the next book. Because I have a big audience there, and I want to help build it and make it stronger. And that's what I like about Kickstarter, because I find that audience, and it grows. But
very much, Kickstarter is very much a social media funnel-esque platform. For those who don't know exactly what Kickstarter is, Kickstarter is a gigantic funnel, and funnels basically drive traffic to a bunch of stuff. Kickstarter has a bunch of exits on those funnels. And in the process, you collect a lot of data on people, but also Kickstarter is also very social. And so it's a hybrid of the two. And whether that was the intention of Kickstarter or not, and in particular in the comic world, I think it's very social, because I think that, that's just the way it's gone. And it's really a super smart tool. And as I stated before, Kickstarter has a lot of data now that you can determine about your audience, where you can figure out, and I'm sure that you have that data of who's actually backing your projects, where they're from, what areas they're from. And I'm sure you can get an idea that when you have a woman who's 34 backing your project, she might have a 7-year-old son or daughter that she's buying it for. It's pretty clear on certain things. So that's super helpful as well. Just demographic wise of figuring out how to target your audience.
And that's why a lot of people get mad, but that's why a lot of the big mainstream companies are going to Kickstarter now. Like you see the Power Rangers comic or Keanu Reeves book. So that's why Kickstarter is a big platform to go to, because a lot of these companies are going there as well. So
it's also direct to market as well, and that's a big thing, meaning that you're selling directly to your market. You're not going through a person, anymore, and that you're not taking risks, or you're not going into debt into Image or to Diamond. You're selling directly to your audience, and then therefore they get an idea. And then if they like one of your books, they're going to come over to your website and a variety of other stuff, and they're going to find out everything else that you have, and then you get also that social boost as well. And so it's super interesting what's happened with it. And I think in many ways, Kickstarter is here to stay, and I think it's very much the future with it. And so that kind of leads me to another point, though, because I also think Kickstarter has grown because of cons and COVID not happening. Obviously, COVID happened and cons didn't happen. And Florida is an interesting state. I'm going to just throw that out there, where it is legitimately half and half, where there are conventions going on. I can mention certain people, Travis Gibb is down there, and Travis is great. I can't wait for his next book. I don't know if I can say it. Cthulhu Invades Oz.
You can. He's my buddy too.
Cthulhu Invades Oz was great, and then I think he's got something else coming out similar to that, and I'm going to leave it at that, because I don't want him to yell at me, nor do I want to be sued. But everybody's minds are spinning here. Todd Kelly is down there as well, and Ruben Romero is another person who's down in Florida that I know well. So obviously, Florida is a very interesting state where some cons are going on, some cons aren't going on. Some comic shops are having signings. Obviously, people are wearing masks and all that stuff. But then we go to a place like Connecticut or New York and Washington, D.C., which is where I was living about 6 weeks ago, and I just moved to Connecticut. Obviously, nothing's happening. And so COVID has sort of wrapped the entire industry, and now it's half and half, and things are all colluded and messed up, for lack of a better word here. So how have you been affected? Because obviously everybody's been affected in some degree with COVID, especially in the comic world.
You're right about the comic book stores. So my fellow co-creators and creators, unfortunately for me, I work on the weekends, so I can't really make it. But I do notice a lot of my co-creators are out there pushing as much as they can. It is frustrating because, like, I do MegaCon, and I was going to do another one, and Fanboy. I think they had a Fanboy Con, and they keep pushing it back. So I'm like, I don't know what's the direction going to be in conventions. It's an up or down kind of case thing right now, but hopefully with this, if you get the shots, or if they ever push them around fast enough, they'll open them more things. They're opening conventions, but a lot of people have got to start following the rules, because this state will quickly shut you down if you don't follow the rules. Like, I work for the Big Mouse, and I work in a resort there, and they had this huge convention. And yes, they do bring in conventions now because they need the money. We know this. And all these people weren't wearing masks. So what did the company do? They kicked them out. Says you're not following the rules, you're out. So we kind of see an adjustment coming around, but it's just taking small steps because we have to find, people have got to do what they're told, or we're just not going to make it.
So to even go off of that, because obviously I think, well, what's starting to happen is that we're now entering a crossroads where a lot of these cons are dying and they need the cash badly. Otakon a few months ago put something out saying, hey, we might not ever come back because we need $250,000, which is 8% of our annual income operating budget that keeps all of our stuff in storage and basically keeps certain people paid more or less on staff, or at least compensates them for their time, helps to keep our website running, logo designs. And if we don't get that, and they had a donation button and all that stuff, that we may not come back for 2021 because we're starting to plan for it. And that's in August, July, August. And so obviously there's that occurring with that, where certain cons just don't have money in their coffer to play around. And then at the same time, there's also a lot of people who are economically downtrodden right now and beat up extensively, and that affects things. And obviously a con is a luxury. And then on top of that, if I go to a con, and I want to take a picture with a cosplayer, but we're 6 feet apart, how does that all work? And so obviously, and then even taking pictures with celebrities, if I just spend $90 and a celebrity's there and you're telling me I can take a picture even if I pay them, and I just spend $90 on a ticket, it's very complicated. And so I'm curious how you view cons working, because there is a big problem with big money in cons and how all that works. And I've been saying it with celebrities, they get a guarantee. And so every sale they make counts against their guarantee. So if you go to a celebrity and spend $100, that's counting against the guarantee they received. And then anything beyond that. So if their guarantee is 20 grand and they sell 25,000, they get 25,000. But if they only sell 15, they get $20,000 regardless. And so now, that's going to be a big problem too, especially if we have to social distance, or if I have to wear my mask in the middle of the photo, it's like WTF, So, and obviously that affects everybody, and that affects indie comics because it's foot traffic by definition, And so I'm curious how you view how all this is going to work, because I don't know. It's a question that I've asked a lot of people, and everybody has a different answer. And we all agree that it's a problem that is not so solvable so quickly. So I'm curious how you view all that's going to be, and even going even more and more local on that. How is it going to work with space at cons? Because cons are crowded, and con crud is a real thing.
Yeah, everything you said and more. Because cons have been a big help for me. I got a lot of fans and a lot of views because I was able to be out there selling my product. It's easy to put your product out on Facebook.
There's a saying that you need to be seen and not just heard.
Yeah.
And so that's what it is. But continue. Sorry for interrupting.
No, but it's true, because I get a lot of more. One year I did it and I got all these people looking around me, because I didn't tell you say this, but the big important thing about Seed Seekers is I want fan art, and that's how I get the kids, because I'm always looking for the kids to draw me fan art and get put in the magazine. So, because a lot of the kids are afraid to show their work, or don't want to show their work, or do want to show their work, and where do they go? So I like to put their work in there. So that's how I would get the people at the convention. And that's just a big loss for me, because the huge conventions, which thanks God for the celebrities to bring the people in, bring the people to me who might have that same interest, because they bring in the anime, because it's got a little anime feel to it. So the anime people come to me and they want to draw the people. So I'm losing almost, I would say, 25 to 50% of myself right there because of that. And if they do decide to open, because they're talking about open MegaCon, they keep pushing it back. Now it's August, knock on wood. If they do bring it in, and like I said, I work for the Big Mouth, and they slowly reach our capacity, but it's still social distancing. You just won't have that capacity crowd like you would or were hopeful. And like you mentioned, they can't bring all the celebrities in. They can't bring the celebrities from England or London or foreign countries like that too. So you lose half your audience there. It's a touch and go subject. I mean, you got so many factors that don't help or help, So yeah.
And even to go further, I mean, maybe some of these celebrities say, look, I like my fans, but I don't want to go out till things are okay. I mean, I'm in that boat where I'm saying to myself, 2021 is written off for me, and I'm a fan panelist. I'm not going to a con this year. I'm not crazy. I'm going to let everything settle in because, and it's not that I'm anti-vaccination. It's not that I'm anti-mask. It's that I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. And honestly, I just don't trust any of it because cons were never safe to begin with, and let alone with this. And I don't feel like being around 25 to 30,000 people within like 6 inches of each other, even when we have a vaccination back. No offense to anybody else, but, I don't really want to be next to somebody and then have 6 inches of air in a tight space. With all due respect,
Right.
It's not something that I'm willing to go back to. Not to mention that I can get whatever I want now online, and I get there's something missing, but I'm willing to have a little bit missing to be safe and to feel more comfortable. And I'm not a claustrophobic type of guy. I'm very approachable. I'm very warm. But even now, I'm saying to myself, like, do I really want to go back into that? And so, and I think that there's a lot of people like me in many ways who say, I'm not so ready to jump back into, the pan so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I view it. And that's why I like doing this because it's much safer. I'm in my house. And when we're done, I just turn it off and it's great. Go back. I can legitimately get ice cream in my refrigerator. It's wonderful.
Right.
But having said all that, I do want to give you an opportunity to promote yourself because obviously the Kickstarter, the link is up and it's been up for the last, I think, 25 to 30 minutes. So obviously you can go back to Kickstarter before I give you the opportunity to promote yourself. So the link is up. Feel free to click that on Twitch, YouTube. There should be a link up there as well as on Facebook. So obviously that's up there. And is there anything else you'd like to promote? Because obviously the Kickstarter is major that needs to be promoted. Do you have a Facebook page, website, Twitter account, Instagram?
Yep. Kickstarter is very important to me, guys. So please take a look at it. I have lots of great perks on there. If you want to just read PDFs, I got the PDF perks. If you're new to the series, I got the big whopping great big worlds perk. Rewards come out. If this gets funded, I will send out rewards. I'm a kind and generous person, and I love to give out cheap rewards. I have great exclusive digital or physical rewards as well, like the Seed Seeker exclusive cutter. I got the Renzo, very fantastic artist. I am coloring it digitally now. It's going to look beautiful, wonderful. He is a very terrific artist. All of this is to supply the printing and to pay for some of the artists and the editors here on my project. So it is very important to me that it's funded. I am halfway on my goal. I'm not expecting huge numbers. If I do, stretch goals galore. But I do appreciate those who have supported and backed me at this point. I am looking for my biggest thing right now. It's not the profit. Profit's very good, don't get me wrong. But it's about the numbers. More backers, more people, more views, more looks. And I do really appreciate everybody who has been sharing this project, talking to people about it. It means a lot to me. So thank you. So yes, the Kickstarter is up here. You can check out it on my Facebook. I will be promoting and posting it. I have a Facebook. Just look Schwartz Graphic Arts, I believe it is. My Instagram is Schwartz Arts. Don't ask. That's my last name and my first name combined. That's where I got the name. It's actually, here's a double entendre for you. I actually got it from work because they give us a little passcode, and that's my passcode. Don't worry, you don't know the passcode or the password. But anyway, enough of that. And my website is www.schwartzgraphics.com. SCHWMARTZ graphics.com. So check that out.
So on that note, obviously I'm going to encourage everybody, check out the Kickstarter, take a look at it. It's interesting stuff, and obviously if you have a kid in your life, whether you're an aunt, uncle, you're a parent and your kid's 7 to probably 12, they're most likely going to at least enjoy some aspect of this. So I encourage people to check this out. Link obviously is up there, whether you're watching this on YouTube, whether you're watching this on Twitch, whether you're watching this on Facebook, or you see me blasting into a bunch of groups and it comes across you, please check that out. Also, share this interview, share what people do, share the Kickstarter is a big one. And obviously, as I've been saying to everybody else, you definitely, if you like what you see, you should be backing economically. Backing economically is super important. Digitally for the first issue, it's $1. For this graphic novel, I think it's $3 digitally. It's not that much money. It's cheaper than your Starbucks Frappuccino in the morning. It's cheaper than a Monster Energy drink for the most part. And I love my Monster Energy drinks. Don't get me wrong, but it's cheaper than that. So give it up. Give it up for a day. It's not going to kill you if money's super tight. But honestly, in all seriousness, though, I've been saying this. If money is tight in your life and you're not backing anybody's projects and things are going on and you're trying to take care of your family, keep your 4 walls safe, keep water on, keep electricity on, make sure your internet's on, making sure your kids have food, making sure you got food, making sure your mortgage is paid or your rent is paid. Things are scary in the world right now, and I completely understand it, and most people do. But you should be following people on social media. Social media is free. Instagram's free. Checking out somebody's website is free. Checking out Facebook is free. Sharing is free. Obviously, if I didn't say Twitter already, Twitter is free. And so all that stuff is free. It doesn't cost you anything. And legitimately, giving somebody a heart, giving somebody a like, giving somebody a retweet, giving somebody a like on Facebook, sharing it, even leaving a comment, it's super important. It makes somebody feel good. It lets people know they're going in somewhat of the right direction. And more importantly, though, it actually affects Facebook's algorithms. And at this point, when people actually give you a heart, it gets further up and it gets further into other people's feeds, especially the earlier on that post is put out there. And so definitely doing that when you see people's stuff. And then all of a sudden, that's why sometimes you see somebody out of nowhere get like 900 views on something within an hour, because legitimately 300 people viewed it first, and then Facebook purposely pushes that forward based on their algorithm system. So it's super important to like things and give it hearts more than likes. So definitely keep that in mind. And at that point, there's no excuse not to support something that's free social media wise. And it does mean the difference, and you never know who's going to be looking at it. So that's my, advice to everybody, to do that. And I'm going to give you the final word, because that's what we do here. So the final word on selling your project and anything else you want to promote.
I can't thank you enough. I mean, I never really thought I had so many fans, and when I just heard you tonight, you just made me very happy. So thank you very much. I mean, I'm glad to have fans. Hopefully seed seekers will shine, right?
Well, we got 16 days, everybody. Go make it happen.
Thank you.